the fear of failure isn't as simple as it sounds. Of course, we fear failure. Of course, no one wants to fail. No one wants to experience the feeling that they are not good enough, that they didn't do a good job, that they aren't capable. Of course, you fear failure, right? That makes sense. I've been in therapy for about 6 years now, and a big component to the work I've done in therapy has been about the fear of failure and how it has held me back from experiencing a lot of the things, or even attempting to do a lot of the things that I wanted to achieve in my life because of that fear of failing. And a lot of that, of course, is tied to what others think of you, they believe about you, what you believe about yourself in relation to your failures, being embarrassed, not feeling good enough, of course. I think a big part of the fear of failure that we might not recognize when we're working through this is that it's not that you fear failure. You fear the shame you know you're going to put yourself through if or when you fail. And that, realizing that for myself, has made an enormous impact on my ability to fail, letting myself fail. Because, of course, in life, you're going to fail. Failure is an inevitable. You need to fail in order to succeed. They go hand in hand. You can't avoid failure. You shouldn't avoid failure. Like, you should actually chase failure. But if you know that you're going to shame yourself every time you fail, or if you were to fail, you know you're going to put yourself through that turmoil and that hate and berating yourself and all that resentment, then of course you're not going to want to fail. You're not going to even let yourself approach anything that would potentially lead to failure, whether that's a relationship, a career, a creative endeavor, whatever. You're not going to let yourself do that because you're going to put yourself through the shame, and you know that. And you've done it before, and it's what you know you should do if you were to fail. So instead of fearing failure, you're fearing yourself, the punishment you're going to give yourself if you fail. And maybe at some point in your life, you were taught that that's what you should experience if you fail, right? Like that is how you should be punished, as though failure is bad. And so it's really important to unearth those beliefs of what failure means. And instead of focusing on the failure itself, focus instead on how to not treat it as something that's bad that requires punishment. Because again, like I said, you are fearing the shame you're going to put yourself through, that you know you're going to put yourself through. What if, and stick with me here, which I know it's going to sound crazy, what if you don't shame yourself when you fail? What if you don't put yourself through that? What if you don't hate yourself when you fail? That's an option, right? And that is exactly the solution to this issue. Now, obviously, that is so much easier said than done. And I'm working you through my own thought process, my own learning process, as I've had to do this in therapy, in the pages of my journal, the work I've had to do. Obviously, it's easier said than done to not shame yourself when you fail, because there have been a lot of conditioned beliefs throughout your life that have taught you that you have to experience shame if you fail, that failure is bad, that failure means something about you and your worth and your value. So I think it's really important, if you're struggling with this, to start there, okay? What does failure mean about you or for you in your life? What does it mean to fail? Write down all those beliefs. Look at them, bring them to the light, see them for what they are, because those beliefs are guiding the way you act, right? The way you behave towards yourself. So understand, okay, this is why failure is bad, because it means this, this, and this. Okay, so now you know why. Now, consider what the alternative is to shaming yourself. When you see those beliefs about you, like this is what it means about me if I fail. Okay, what's the alternative? What is the opposite of what it could mean about you when you fail? It's important to implant those new narratives into your mind, because they are what's going to dictate whether or not you shame yourself, hate yourself, punish yourself for failure. It's so important to have a conversation with your inner child in the way that you would have wanted to be spoken to or treated when you were a child, when you failed. Because like I said, failure is an inevitable part of life. There's no way to avoid it. Just being a child who is learning to walk will fail, right? They will fall over, they will stumble, they won't be perfect at it immediately. They won't know how to do it immediately. They have to fail in order to get better, to understand how to do something. That is part of life. So you have to kind of go backwards and talk to your inner child. Treat yourself the way you would have wanted to be treated when you failed as a kid. Think about the way you were treated when you were a kid. Ask yourself, how did that feel? Did you like that? Would you want to experience that now? If you don't want to experience that now, if you didn't like that, why are you putting yourself through that? It's so important to have that conversation with your inner child. Inner child work is so vital for any sort of personal growth, in my experience. It might not work for everybody, of course, But for me, it has been so transformative because all of it, well, most of it stems from the way we experience the world as children. The things we're taught about the world, about ourselves, about how we should see ourselves in order to survive in the world. So your fear of failure and your shame as punishment for failure was probably taught to you when you were a kid. So you have to go back to that time, to that age you were, and have a conversation with them and reparent them. Show them a different way that the world can be experienced for them and how they can live in the world without feeling that. So you understand what those beliefs are that you have initially about failure. You consider the alternatives. Okay, what's a new narrative I can give myself when I fail? And then you have to really, really show yourself forgiveness and compassion. That's the only way to change those narratives. Instead of, oh, if I fail, I am stupid, I didn't practice hard enough, I didn't do enough, I didn't, whatever. Instead of that, okay, let me show myself compassion, some forgiveness. I'm human, I make mistakes, I tried something new, I couldn't be perfect at it immediately, I didn't know. You don't know until you know. I tried something, I realized that I need a little bit more skills, I need to hone my skills a little bit more, whatever. And it's okay. And I still love myself, and I'm going to try again, or I'll practice a little bit more, or I'll try a little bit harder and see how I feel about it. And if I don't like it, maybe I don't have to do it again, or maybe it's something I don't need to do anymore, right? Even giving yourself the ability to say, no, I don't want this now. Like, I don't like it, or it doesn't feel good, instead of forcing yourself into situations where maybe it's not quite aligned with you and you already know you're not going to succeed at it because it's not right for you, but putting yourself through that anyway, and then putting yourself through the shame on top of it, of course, it's going to ruin your self-worth. You're going to feel really awful about yourself, and then that's going to perpetuate the cycle that you're not good enough, that you only deserve to fail, or you should only be in situations where you're not good enough, or you aren't aligned with this thing and that's why you're failing. You can see how it kind of runs really deep. So it's important to unearth all of those beliefs and in a sense reprogram them, right? You're creating new ones. You're planting new beliefs that then will grow into flowers that offer you a different way of experiencing failure. Because failure is inevitable. You will fail. There's no way to avoid it, like I've said. And I'm reiterating this because I think it's so important to emphasize it. For me, repeating things works. It helps me really solidify things in my brain. You cannot avoid failure. I know that's terrifying to hear. It's frustrating because maybe you're a perfectionist and you're trying your best to be perfect all the time. So you have this hope in you that maybe one day I won't fail at anything. Maybe one day I'll have life figured out and it'll be perfect and I'll never make a mistake again. That's not going to happen. And I know that's a cold, harsh truth to hear. I struggle with it myself. I have to tell myself these things to remind myself that this fantasy of perfection is not real, and it's hurting me more in the long run than it's helping me. Accepting failure, but also not seeing it as a bad thing, is what has been so transformative for me in my life. It's made me feel so much better just existing. Because if failure is inevitable, if it's going to happen no matter what, and I also don't have negative narratives associated with it, then I am free to just live. You're free to exist when you don't fear failure because you don't see yourself as bad or wrong or shameful if you fail. And so then you're able to do things that you would have always wanted to do, but were scared to do because you feared the failure of it, because you feared yourself. You feared the punishment you were going to give yourself. Now you can actually try that new hobby. You can actually try writing that book. You can actually try going on dates, whatever that is for you. Because no matter the outcome, even if it doesn't work out, even if you fail, even if it's not as good as you wanted it to be, even if someone doesn't like you, whatever, the failure is not something to be ashamed of. Because there's nothing bad about failure. It is, right? Just like success is, failure is, right? The yin and the yang both exist. Both are going to happen, whether you like it or not. There's nothing we can do to avoid either of those things. We can sabotage ourselves in many cases, sure. But, I think also we're much better at things than we like to believe we are at times too, right? We assume we're going to fail. We might sabotage ourselves to fail. But in many cases, we're actually really good at things. So no matter what we do to avoid even success, we'll still succeed in many ways. We might not see it as success. We might see it as something different, right? We might cloud that perception of it. But you are better than you think you are in many things. And also, you're not going to be as good at some things. And either are okay, right? Neither should go to your head too much. Neither should affect you so deeply because they're going to happen sometimes whether you like it or not. And that's a both positive and a negative, right? Sometimes you'll have success whether you like it or not. And sometimes you'll have failure whether you like it or not. And that's it. There's no way around any of that. It's going to happen. So instead of fearing failure, ask yourself, do you fear the shame you're going to put yourself through? And if you do fear the shame you're going to put yourself through, reconsider what the narratives are that you want to ascribe to failure for you, because you have control of those. You don't have control of everything in your life, obviously, but you do have control of those. You get to decide what those narratives are. You get to decide how you see yourself when you fail. I know that's kind of also a crazy concept to think that you get to decide what failure means about you, but it's true, right? At one point, someone else decided it for you, right? Maybe your parents, your caregivers, but now you get to decide. You have that power and control, so take it. If you don't have power and control anywhere else, you have to let go of that and accept it. But here, you have it, so you might as well take it. That is the kindest thing to do for yourself. And that will help your reparenting of your inner child. When you take that control and you show yourself, you know what? I'm going to treat myself better. I'm going to be nicer to myself. I'm going to show myself a little bit of kindness and forgiveness when I fail, because I can't avoid it. So if I can't avoid it, I might as well accept it and be nice to myself about it. And that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Because I think some people also think that failure and shaming yourself when you fail is a motivating tactic. Maybe. I don't think it's coming from a very healthy place. I don't think it's going to be very sustainable, and I don't think it's going to make you feel good. I also don't think that forgiving yourself for failure is going to make you complacent at all either. I think that's, again, just a narrative that keeps us thinking that we have to hate ourselves when we fail, And again, who does that serve? It doesn't serve anybody. It only hurts us. Maybe it serves somebody who thrives off of our self-loathing, but do we want to serve that person? No. Why would we? And if you do, it's somewhere to ask yourself why, right? Really ask yourself all these questions. But I think forgiving yourself for failure is actually going to be more motivating to try new things or try again than shaming yourself for failure. I think that's going to sabotage you more in the long run. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you some perspective on your concept of failure and the punishment you give yourself when you fail, and how you can be a little bit kinder to yourself, because I think that goes a long way in your life, way more than shaming yourself does. I know this from my own experience. It's what I've had to work on. I can attest to it myself. Everybody's going to be different though. I am not a therapist, as I always say. So if you have a therapist, for sure talk to them about this. If you just want to have a casual chat about these topics, feel free to book a one-to-one call with me over on my website. I also have a Substack where I write about topics like this in more depth. And also follow me on my other social media accounts to see the rest of my content, my videos, my posts, a little bit of my life over on Instagram. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.